You know that feeling, right? When you're in a conversation and it just feels like you're going in circles.
Uh-huh. Like words are flying back and forth, but the actual answers, they don't quite land.
Exactly. You're left kind of wondering if you missed something or if it all just didn't connect.
Yeah, that sense of disconnect can be, well, really puzzling sometimes.
Definitely. And that feeling is pretty much what we're diving into today. We got this fantastic article shared by a listener. It's called Artefacts from Værensland, A Constellation in a Message by Jamie Herrick's PhD.
Oh, yeah, I read that one. It's fascinating.
It really is. It looks at communication that might seem, you know, illogical on the surface, but it actually reveals this deeper relational kind of logic,
Yeah.
especially when talking about autistic communication.
What's great is how it frames communication, not just as like swapping facts, but this whole process involving context, how people relate, different ways our brains even process language.
And it starts with something super relatable, a meme. You've probably seen variations of it. It's a police officer crouching down, talking to a little kid in one of those toy police cars.
Right, that classic setup, the adult authority figure and the child.
Okay, so the dialogue in the meme goes like this. Police officer asks, "Where do you live?"
And the child says, with my parents.
Police, "Where do your parents live?"
Child, with me.
Police, "Where do you all live?"
Child, together.
Police, "Where is your house?"
Child, next to my neighbor's house.
Police, "Where is your neighbor's house?"
Child, if I tell you, you won't believe me.
Police, "Tell me."
Child, next to my house.
Laughs slightly. Okay, you can see why people find it funny. Right?
Oh, absolutely. The kids' answers seem to just loop around. They don't give the specific, like, address the officer's probably looking for.
Yeah, the humor really leans on our expectation that language should be efficient, right? Like, give me the data point, the street name.
We expect objective details, discrete information.
But the article flips this. It asks, well, what if the kids' answers aren't actually wrong or confusing?
What if they're incredibly precise just within a completely different frame of reference?
Yeah, like, what if that loop, that circularity, isn't a failure to communicate, but actually a clue, a signpost to a different kind of logic?
It reminds me of, trying to navigate somewhere new, and one person gives street names, the other gives landmarks and feelings.
Like, totally. And you're like, just tell me left or right.
Yeah.
But maybe their way makes perfect sense to them.
Exactly. And this leads right into this idea of Gestalt language processing, or GLP. The article suggests this is key to seeing the meme from an autistic perspective.
Okay, GLP, break that down for us a bit.
So with GLP, meaning doesn't really get built up piece by piece, word by word. Instead, it's the whole chunk, the phrase, the rhythm, the emotion tied to it, the context.
Ah, so it's like hearing the whole song, not just analyzing each individual note.
Precisely. You grasp the entire unit. And often these gestalts, these chunks, are learned and retrieved whole. They come pre-packaged, with the tone, the mood, the memory of where you first heard them.
Which is pretty different from how we often think about neurotypical language processing, right? That more analytical, break-it-down approach.
Yeah, the analytic style focuses on dissecting sentences into parts, finding the meaning in the individual words and grammar. GLP is more holistic.
Okay, so let's look at the meme again, but with this GLP lens on. Police asks, "Where do you live?" Child says, "With my parents."
Now, maybe that's not evasion. Maybe it's relational. The child is locating themselves based on their primary connection.
Right. Home isn't coordinates on a map. It's who you're with. That's the most important where.
And then, where do your parents live? With me.
From a purely logical standpoint, it seems circular, maybe redundant.
But in GLP terms, it could be a statement of, like, reciprocal truth. It reinforces the connection. It's not just they live here. It's we are together here.
Which leads perfectly to the next answer. Where do you all live? Together.
Together. It emphasizes that relational geometry. It's like the child is refusing to separate the concept of home from the feeling of belonging and connection.
So the article argues this isn't a failure to communicate location?
No, it's more like a refusal to sever meaning from connection. The circularity isn't a bug, it's a feature. It orbits this central truth. Home is a feeling, a state of being with kin.
Wow. Okay, that reframes it completely. It's not illogical. It's a different kind of logic.
And the article takes this even further, introducing this idea of stone-born people.
Right, I found that part really evocative. What does that mean exactly?
It's a metaphorical way to describe autistic individuals who perhaps navigate the world with these sort of ancestral rhythms or patterns in their nervous systems. Yeah. People who feel the pull of patterns of connections, maybe more deeply.
So for people who resonate with that, the meme isn't just a quick laugh online.
No, the article suggests it's more like a marker, a glyph almost from an old language that people who carry that resonance, that memory, might recognize.
That makes me think of the analogy used in the piece, the ancient stone circles, like Callanish or Stennis.
Exactly. Those weren't built just to be like decoded by anyone passing by. They were for the kin, for people who could stand inside and feel the meaning held within that space, that configuration.
So autistic memes or scripts, maybe they work similarly. They're signals for recognition, not necessarily for everyone to dissect logically.
They're meant to be felt, a signal to others who speak the same key, the article calls them waystones.
Connection without translation, kinship without compromise. That really lands, especially thinking about how often autistic communication might be misunderstood or misheard.
It's about that feeling of, someone else gets this. It's not about proving a point. It's about finding resonance.
Which brings up a crucial question. If this communication style is valid and meaningful within its own context, why does it so often get labeled as, a deficit or something wrong?
And that's where the scientific research comes in. There's a 2025 study in Nature Human Behavior by Crompton and colleagues that's really relevant here.
The double empathy
Well,
research, that's been getting a lot of attention. How did they study communication?
they use something called diffusion chains. Basically, you have a piece of information, like a story, and it gets passed from person to person down a line.
Okay, like the telephone game.
Kind of, yeah. But they looked at what happened when the chain was all autistic people, all non-autistic people, or mixed.
And what did they find?
Well, this is the fascinating part. When autistic people passed information to other autistic people, the meaning, the core message, stayed remarkably clear. It got through.
Wow. So within the autistic group, communication was effective.
Very effective. The breakdown, the friction, the loss of information that happened primarily when the message had to cross neurotypes, autistic to non-autistic or vice versa.
So the problem wasn't necessarily with autistic communication itself.
Exactly. The study concluded that communication breakdown is often due to a mismatch between neurotypes. A double empathy problem, difficulty understanding each other, goes both ways. It suggests the issue isn't an inherent deficit in one group.
It makes you question the neurotypical communication style as the default or only correct way, doesn't it?
It really does. And applying that back to the meme, the humor relies on judging the child's answers against a neurotypical expectation of direct, factual information. But the study suggests this failure might be more about a cultural or neurotype mismatch than incompetence.
This study also mentioned something about disclosure, right?
Yeah, they found that sometimes knowing someone's diagnosis helped build rapport across neurotypes. But interestingly, the deepest connection, the communication that just worked without needing explanation or translation, that happened most often when people shared the same neurotype.
It just flowed.
It just flowed, which provides some strong empirical backing for what the article describes these experiences of feeling understood, of communication clicking within a shared framework.
It's powerful to see research validating those lived experiences. The child in the meme isn't necessarily bad at communicating.
It might just be that the listener isn't attuned to the way they're communicating, the logic they're using.
So bringing it all together, the meme, GLP, the stone circles, the research. The article paints this picture of autistic communication as often involving these constellations of meaning, echoes, scripts.
Yeah, things that return because they carry weight, they carry connection. And it suggests this way of being isn't like a delayed version of neurotypical communication, but something different. Maybe even, as the article puts it, ancestral or rooted in a fundamental way.
Not necessarily old in time, but foundational.
Right. A different lineage of knowing and relating.
But these ways of communicating often get misinterpreted, don't they? By systems that expect something else.
Absolutely. Clinical views might pathologize it as delay or rigidity. Schools might demand a kind of clarity that strips out the context, the relationship, the very things that give it meaning for the speaker.
And the article suggests that autistic individuals might leave these memes, these scripts, these phrases behind almost like survival tools.
Yeah, like a coded cartography, it says, a kin call, hoping someone else will recognize the pattern, understand the shorthand.
It's like leaving a message in a bottle. But the message is a feeling, an echo, a shared joke.
A joke meant not for the masses, but for the few of us who know that sense is not the same as sense-making. That line really stuck with me.
Me too. It captures that feeling of shared understanding that goes beyond literal meaning.
So the ultimate point isn't that autistic people are broken communicators or late to language?
No, it's that they might be communicating within a different system, a different lineage, one that values relationality and encoded belonging just as much, if not more, than linear facts.
It's a profound shift in perspective.
It really is. So going back to that initial feeling, that sense of talking in circles, maybe this whole deep dive encourages us to pause when we feel that way.
To consider that maybe it's not just noise or confusion, maybe there's a different logic system operating, one we haven't recognized yet.
What looks like a failure to communicate from one angle might actually be a really rich, meaningful, truthful expression from another, focused on connection, maybe, instead of just information transfer.
It challenges us to listen differently.
Yeah. So the next time communication feels like it's looping, maybe the question isn't just what's the answer, but what's the center? What's the core value or relationship that this loop is circling around?
That's a great way to put it. Understanding the center, not just demanding a straight line out.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other kinds of languages, what other ways of making sense are happening all around us that maybe we just haven't learned to hear yet?
It's definitely something to think about. A reminder to stay curious about communication.
Well, thank you for diving into this with me. It's been really eye-opening. And a huge thank you to you, our listener, for sharing the article that sparked all this. Hopefully it gives you something new to consider the next time you encounter a constellation in a message.